Well, it isn't easy these days. What should I say? Yeah, especially for me who has a channel dedicated to Russia. And I hope that most of you understand that there's difference between the government of a country and the country itself and the people themselves. Of course, it's almost a cliche to say, but sometimes, of course, people say like, "Oh, you're studying Russian, you must be interested in Putin and so on." And yeah, and I took it. I was taking good spirits. It's just banter and so on. But in the end of the day, it is very hard because Russia has always been defined by its leader, and of course, with this, you would, of course, you do understand, of course, that I am firmly against the action that the Russian government has done towards the Ukrainian state, and especially Putin, who you, there's no coming around it. It's Putin is literally our time's Hitler. How should I put it? Here I said it. It's so hard. The situation right now. I've never been, what should I say, more ashamed of Russia than I am now, or it's kind of yeah, or I should correct say, yeah, I've never been more ashamed of the Russian government, and I know that probably a lot of people in Russia feels the same way, and it's very of course, and it's really hard having a Russian YouTube channel dedicated to Russia because you're gonna be watched to see if you're pro Putin or not, and yeah, and for a time I actually did uh, keep a low profile when it comes to politics, just in order to have a broader audience. And yeah, not that were pro Putin or anything. It's just that I avoided controversial topics when it came to Russia. But of course, it seems very difficult to take the politics out of Russia because my guest, for instance, will over uh, like the best example is with my guest. Politics will eventually pop out sooner or later, and like I think after a year, uh, after 1 year of doing the podcast, I decided to uh, cover political topics. I did one about why do Russians support Putin, for instance. I did an interview about that, and I did, of course, interviews with the foreign correspondent journalists and so on. Yeah, so I've never shied away from that, but I kind of shied away from someone who was openly uh, like oppositional to a certain degree, and maybe, and also when it comes to social media and so on, and maybe it's a fear, I would say, of not being permitted into Russia, being blocked from Russia. But I will, but at this point, I would gladly be expelled from Russia anytime, and especially, and it's hard considering even going there now, at least as long as Putin is alive, because it's so hard. It's like, and this is hard to say, but that's how I feel. It's like it's no coming around it. And I love Russia. I love the Russian culture. I have a lot of friends there, and so on. It's like I love the language and language nerd, but I also love Ukraine and the Ukrainian culture and the Ukrainian language, which is really beautiful. And so what I say is that I want both to have their own cultures to intact. And now is the fact that Russia is suppressing that culture. And as you guys probably know, um, I have done a lot of interviews with people about minority countries in Russia, and there you see where I come from, because I love talking about other languages and other and ethnicities and so on. So of course I am totally in support of the Ukrainian struggle to keep their language and their culture. So of course uh, I would never be pro Putin, especially how he treats his subjects in and other ethnic minorities inside of Russia, especially. So yeah, so it should not come as a shock everything that I say here. That I totally condemn the totally condemn the attacks done by Russia, because it is an invasion. Don't fool yourself at all. It is a literal invasion, and Putin is literally our time's Hitler. There's no coming around it. If you're saying something out, you're deluding yourself at this point. And I pray, uh, my prayers goes to Ukraine, to the people of Ukraine, and I hope that they will finally get their independence from their big neighbor, and I actually and will eventually be allowed to join NATO, because I've been a staunch supporter of NATO for many years, and it's because I have always maintained that there's a difference between politics and the people. And when it comes to politics, I've always been in support of NATO. And this invasion only proves that NATO is necessary. And if you think otherwise, I think you're an idiot, especially if you live in this country. We need NATO. That's how I feel. We need NATO because we can never trust Putin ever again at this point. So don't fool yourself. That's oh yeah. So yeah, I don't know what to do from now on. It's like I will, of course, eventually make interviews. I've been busy uh, being a Norwegian and Russian teacher, being an intern as a Norwegian and Russian teachers uh, the past 3 weeks, and yeah, and I will maybe I will eventually make more interviews, but at this point, it's not like it will take a long time, months, or maybe will be my last ever video that I make. Who knows? Or maybe I will change the name of the podcast entirely and call it uh, instead of the Russia Journals, I would maybe call it something like the Eastern, uh, the Easterners, or something like that. And maybe I can then be more freely to talk about subjects related to post-Soviet countries if I call it the Easterners, because then I wouldn't be ashamed to cover topics like connected to Georgia or Ukraine, since it will be mainly focused at countries that are in Eastern Europe. Maybe that's the direction I will go, by changing the profile of this profile by making it about Eastern Europe and not exclusively about Russia. We will see, and maybe you have some comments about it. It's like I'm open for suggestions, and I yeah. So I hope that everything. I pray for the people of Ukraine, and I pray for the people of Russia, who I hope will soon be released from the shackle of Putin. I hope that they will free themselves from Putin eventually. So that's my final word. I'm just rambling, and uh, like I'm curious to hear what you think about this. If this is just rambling or just crazy fool thoughts. But with that, my last word will be Slava Ukraina, Heroyam Slava. Heroyam Slava. Bye.